Welcome to Writer Talks. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins, and I interview the winners of our short story contests here at Two Sisters Writing and Publishing. Well, this evening, you are very fortunate because you get to meet the very talented Mac Fox. He is one of the winners of our 2020 contest, so he'll be published in our fourth annual International Anthology of Short Story Writers. Welcome, Mac.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. So, your winning story, I was the judge of it. We judge our monthly stories that people submit to our stories. You can go to twosisterswriting.com and submit short stories. And this year, it's anything goes. So, he wrote a story called The 20-Year Tension. And it is so good. It's about this lusty romance that's been brewing for 20 years. And when it finally happens, it's just extraordinary, not only because it's exciting, but the way Mac wrote it, he used such compelling, fascinating, original language. I was like, wow, winner. So, Mac, can you talk about this story and what inspired it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sort of the title says it all, right? I think one of the most underrated pieces of romance and of sexuality is tension, right? Like the build up, the drum roll. Um, and that's really what I wanted to focus on. It's like what happens when two people that have not just like tangentially been together, but there's like an intimacy almost, and an intimacy that's built and built and built and built. What is that like when that finally is able to burst forward? So that was kind of the intention of the story, and then also sort of about reconnecting too, because I think that there's so many relationships that we have at certain points in our life that then sort of pause, and then you can come back, and it's almost like they roar forward. It's even more dramatic when they come back. So those were really the two things that I was like, wow, yeah, I think that that's what makes me excited and interested in a romance is all of those different dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I just there's so much value in like just that pull of that tension. So
Yes, and yes. And can you talk about who you are, where you live, the wonderful, awesome life you have?
yes, absolutely. So I live out in the most beautiful place on earth. I live in Washington State, out here on the Olympic Peninsula. So it's really nothing but pine trees and water and mountains, and it's like living in a painting. My wife and I, we are high school sweethearts. So we live
Oh,
on a very small little farm in a very small town called Port Orchard, with our two kids, and then dogs, cats, chickens, ducks, goats, quail,
wow.
rabbits. So it's yeah, I feel so lucky to live in this place with these people. It's just like the best.
Oh.
And I work, I'm not a full-time writer, unfortunately. It's what I'm
Mm.
working towards. That's what's on my vision board. But
Uh-huh.
I work for a tech company in Seattle. So, got a lot of things to balance, but I think one of the things that helps me keep going is writing and just having that always to come back to.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we are going to offer some solid tips to writers about
Yeah.
how you balance family, farm, career, and your creative writing. So we'll get to that in a minute. But right now, Mac, I want to talk about your story, the 20-year tension. Some of the writing in here is so beautiful. It says, um, it's there's you put words together like this. I inhaled her breath like the scent of lilac and lust. I love that so much. And you were like, her lips, rose petals in a spring sunset. Something welled in my stomach like I'd swallowed fire. I just love, and the whole story, okay, is full of little beautiful strings of words that are just, you want to read them over and over because they're just beautiful. They just flow. So, how do you do that? Like, do you just get in the zone and it flows through you, or do you have to rewrite over and over?
So there's like three things I think that are responsible. First, rose petal lips is just that's just what my wife looks like. So I have to shout out because she's gorgeous, and that's an easy one.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
so The second two, so my background, I'm like a classically trained Shakespearean actor. So my relationship to words is all really about like Shakespeare and the rhythm of those words and the meter of those words. And like, you know, if you think you don't like Shakespeare, usually what I tell people is like you just haven't seen it done well. Because if you see an actor that like really understands the language, that actor can like lift you out of their seat because it's just something about like the magic of the words. So when I write, it's that's always what I'm looking for. Like what's the rhythm? Where's the flow? Well, what makes this interesting? Um, and then the last one is just like I don't have a an image based memory. Like I don't remember images. I remember text. Like I can remember whole paragraphs off of a page of a book, but I can't necessarily remember what my best friend's house looks like. I just don't the
Wow.
I don't remember things in images. So
Uh-huh.
that it's almost like that's how I can remember things and remember images is like creating this sort of this collation of descriptors that my brain for whatever reason can latch onto and it can't do the same with an image. Um, yeah, and then I'll just say again that my wife's gorgeous and she makes it really easy to write really beautiful things. So
Wow, because oh my gosh, she's so fortunate. But you, I mean, I'm telling you, this whole story is so passionate. And it's not just shallow, like this was in our erotica contest. And so as when I judge those, I'm very careful. I do not want to read a tangle of limbs and it's all about what things look like. And it's deep. It's, it's soul felt and it's very creative, not just, an arm over here and a leg over there and a kiss here and it's, you know what I mean? That's boring. That's so
absolutely,
boring.
and misses the
Um,
mark. I think right. Like there's like the whole point of erotica is like the you can't get titillated with it if you don't understand the people. And it's like it's such a more relationship and character focused medium. It can't just be arm over here, leg over here, because that's who wants to read that? That's boring. And it's like,
no,
why?
right,
It has
right.
to be deeper. It has to be about that connection. Or at least it has to be
Mm-hmm.
about that for me.
I love it. I love it. And the longing. And then when you're longing for
Yeah.
something for 20 years, it like replays in your head of what could be. And then finally you're in the moment and they're both like in shock. Please go to twosisterswriting.com. Winning Stories, Mac Fox, the 20-year itch. It will be there soon. We're posting our winning stories very soon, but he will be in the 2020 anthology. So you can read it there. And it's just outstanding. So, Mac, let's talk about how you balance writing with all the wonderful blessings in your life.
Yes. So um the first I have a little post-it note next to my desk with a quote from Neil Gaiman. He gets asked all the time. He's my favorite writer. I have him tattooed right here in my arm.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
he just said the key to writing is you have to write things and then you have to finish them. And
Wow.
that's what I always just try to go is like, well, I started it, I have to see it through the end. But the practical of that is setting like realistic boundaries. That's my daughter in the background.
Oh,
Um, so like I write at least 1,000 words a day, and that's a strict limit for me. Um, at first I had a really long commute over some. I here in Washington we have this big ferry system between the bay, and so I would write on the ferry. So that's 2 hours a day that I just had to myself. But obviously since COVID, haven't had that. So I've had to adjust to okay, well maybe I have 15 minutes here. I'll write 200 words, and then I have a half hour over here. Maybe I'll write 500 words, and being okay with it sort of being chunked out a little bit more. But at the end of the day, I have to be able to look back and say, yep, okay, 1,000 words at least were crossed. And then my de facto editor is my best friend Callie, and I will also usually say like, okay, I'm gonna have a project for you by this date. And what I love about Callie is that if I don't have something for her on that date, she's just gonna make fun of me mercilessly. So it's a great motivator to make sure like, oh God, I don't want to hear it from Callie. I got to make sure I have that draft for her.
uh-huh.
Yeah, so I really like setting realistic word counts though. I think is really helpful. I started out trying to be like, I'm gonna write 3,000 words a day, and that lasted for like 3 days, and then I was like, I don't ever want to do that again.
Uh-huh.
So just kind of knowing your limits with that. Yeah. And then I think like even if you can't do that, if you can find something every day where you connect with what you're doing, and that, I mean, writing is good, but I think sometimes reading is even better. Like it's my ability to write and create leveled up so much when I just started taking reading as seriously as I took writing.
Hmm.
Um, so I try to read at least a half hour a day, write at least 1,000 words a day, more if I can, but those are like touchdowns. And I do that Monday through Friday, no exceptions, no excuses.
And do you write before work or during lunch break or in the evening?
So any and all. I have kind of a weird schedule. So if I have 15 minutes after a meeting, I'll just pull up I usually have like the document open behind me at work the whole time. So if I like
Uh-huh.
have 5 minutes where I in between meetings, I'll jot some stuff down, or at a lunch break, or yeah, after my kids go to bed, you know, just sit on the couch and maybe pour a cocktail and get the words down, you know.
I love that. I love that. I love that. And so you said you're working on your fifth manuscript. So that means you're
Yeah,
getting plenty of practice. Can you talk about your dream? Are you dreaming of being a full-time novelist or what's your goal?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I would love nothing more than for my job to be, you know, making things up and writing them down.
Uh-huh.
And I think if you had gone back and asked me at any stage of my life, like, is this what you wanted to do? I think I probably would have said yes.
Uh-huh.
So absolutely. No, there's another Neil Gaiman quote, which I hope it's coming across. I'm a little bit obsessed with him, but he said, you know, you have to write 300,000 words before you write a good one. Um,
What? Wow.
and I
Okay.
don't know if that's true. I certainly feel like it's true for me because you know I always say I've like this is my fifth manuscript because I wouldn't count some of them as novels. They were There's a long story that I told. I don't know if they really count as novels, but really like now I'm getting to a place where I feel, you know, like we were just talking about, I have a process. And now I feel like I have a better idea of what I'm actually interested in. You know, I think there's a period in your life where you try to just sound like other people, you know, and I
Yeah.
think I'm kind of starting to maybe sound like, you know, myself, which is really
Hmm.
motivating as well.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, absolutely. My ultimate dream is to be a full time novelist and do nothing but think about stories.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely my full time dream.
I love that. That's so exciting. So while you're doing other things like being on a farm, being in beautiful nature, being with your family, your wife, your kids, do you get all kinds of ideas popping up and do you carry a notebook around to record them or do you just go right later and write them down?
Yes to both. I think one of the coolest things about growing up in the Northwest is like it's hard to describe without seeing it, but it's just green. It's just trees for like as far as you can go. And you know, imagine being a little kid and all you do all day is you run through trees and like you know for certain something else is out there, you know, and your little brain is just going 100 miles an hour. I don't think I ever grew out of that phase. Like I still
Uh-huh.
kind of I'll walk into our backyard and be like, something else is going on here, and I'm gonna find out what it is. I I didn't used to be a notebook guy, but I started it and now I'm like very much addicted to it. One of the other things I do with like the practice thing is I always have some kind of novel that I'm working on, and that's like the 1,000 words a day. And then usually I'll write in a notebook something else. So something like this, like a you know, erotica, maybe a short story, a poem, an essay, something just like just as practice. So that's where all of those live in my notebooks. And it's a really fun thing to just like go out into the forest and write things down in a notebook that just kind of come to you as you're out there. So yeah, the notebook is where I think I maybe have the most fun because it doesn't feel as like I'm not trying to make progression. I'm just enjoying the process of writing, and I don't think there's any
Right.
better way to enjoy that than out in the middle of a pine tree ocean.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. 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 So how do you feel when you're writing? Do you forget about everything? Do you lose all sense of time? Is it euphoric? Is it stressful?
Yes, Yep. uh, I yeah. So there, as well as I do, like there are some days where it just comes and you're like, this is awesome. And
Yes.
you're in it. And then you look back and you're like, that was 3 hours and I feel great. My fingers hurt, but I feel great.
Hmm.
Um, and then there are some days where it's just like nobody else shows up to work that day.
Hmm.
You come to the keyboard and all of your characters are still in bed and they don't want to have anything to do with you today. Um, I really what I'm focused on the last year or so probably is just enjoying it. Because like I'll never be this ever again. And there's so much joy in kind of being at the beginning and not really like not having all the answers, not knowing everything. That's really where the joy for me is. And I would say I'm definitely in like the gardener camp of writers. I don't typically know how stories are going to end. I know how they open, and then it's the fun for me is like uncovering the next step. And I was like discovering, oh, maybe that's what happens. Um,
Wow.
and that's really motivating because like when you do that and you start to feel really connected to something, and then it just starts to unfurl and unfurl and unfurl. That is like that's a super addicting feeling. Yeah.
It's really exciting. So do you write all fiction?
Um, I I write mostly fiction, I would say. I mean, obviously, poetry is always pretty personal. So the poems I do write usually are within the realm of, you know, buried skeletal trauma. But one of the things that I do have published out there is a nonfiction essay about, family life and repeating traumas. I don't find a nonfiction as fun to write. It's not because of what I was just talking about. Like I already know how all my stuff ends, so
Uh-huh, right.
it's not as fun for me that way. Yeah, definitely fiction is something more nourishing to me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Nice. Excellent. Excellent. So if you could describe your dream life as a writer, what would that be?
Oh man. Honestly, I don't know that I have a big dream. I would love to have people read my books, and I think the best thing that I could ever imagine is people responding to them. And uh, for me, I when I was a kid, I just had such a weird life that books were one of the only things that really like kept me going. And like,
Mhm.
wow, how cool would it be for me to talk with one of the authors that was that for me as a kid,
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah.
So I think my dream is being on the reverse of that, of like writing something that I'm proud of and made an impact on somebody.
Hmm.
I don't know how much more I could ask for than that, really, because it's just like it. It's one of those things. Like the stories are just such a central part of being human. To write a story and to have somebody enjoy it,
Yes.
that's amazing. As
Yes.
I
It
was trying to
really,
like
really.
keep it cool when you were saying nice things about what I wrote, but it's
Ah,
just so like, oh my gosh, somebody likes
ah,
something that I wrote. It's
yeah.
there's nothing better than that for me.
Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. That's such a great, great feeling. I'm excited that we get to be someone who recognizes or an entity that recognizes your awesome work because we get really excellent submissions. And as I said, in the erotica category, it's very important that it's high quality writing, and yours certainly was. And lots of the other submissions are. I want everybody to be a winner, but we
Yeah,
have to pick. That's just the nature of a contest. But so, Matt, can you also talk about the importance of reading? You touched on that
yeah,
earlier. How does that help your writing?
yeah. I mean, Virginia Woolf said if you read 1,000 books, your writing will flow like water, right? And that's true. And I think I always want to approach a book like it's like a master class. Like somebody is teaching me how to structure stories, and like reading a lot of different things, reading as many things as you can get your hands on, because it's how do you do something without seeing how other people already do it?
All
It
right.
doesn't mean that you have to necessarily follow all of the rules, but it's like
Mhm.
you should understand how a story works, and you can only understand how a story works by reading those those stories.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think also there's even reading books you don't like, I think is really powerful because you can
Hmm.
identify like, I really don't like that you did that thing. And that makes me have this reaction. I was reading, I can't remember what book it was, but I was reading a book and I hit a chapter and I was like, wow, that made me as a reader really turn off. And then I went to start writing my current project at that time the next day. And I realized mid chapter, like, oh, I'm writing the same thing that turned me off last night. And I had to kind of like,
Oh my goodness.
pivot all the way back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because there is so much value in repeatedly just committing to like learning how a story works.
Hmm.
How does this structure work? How does this character work? What are these devices? What's this author's like voice? Um, yeah, it's to me it's essential. I don't know how I could even feel like inspired to write if I wasn't reading as much as I do.
Hmm. Wonderful, wonderful. So my sister and I always say when we've had jobs, it's paid research for writing because all because you meet so many
Yeah,
characters and so many wild experiences. Do you ever feel that way about your professional life being fodder for your writing?
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's there's a weird intimacy that you have with coworkers, right? Because in a weird way, like some weeks I feel like I spend more time with my coworkers than I do with my family, if we're having like a particularly busy week. But yet maybe I don't know, maybe I spend 20 hours a week with you, but I know nothing about you other than like who you are at work. And what a
Mhm.
weird version that we all give to our coworkers. Uh, yeah. And it's just constant dynamic changes and weird decisions. And there's so many different, yeah, that's such a good way to put it. Paid research.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah,
so if there's ever difficult times that you're truly not enjoying, which everybody's had that, I've
absolutely.
certainly had that in different jobs, it's like, wow, this is really showing me something into the human psyche that I can use later on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you have, I had a disagreement with a coworker, um, and I went to talk to another coworker about it, and she said something, it was like the most profound thing I've ever heard. And she was like, don't ever attribute malice where stupidity can be the answer. And I was like, what an
Wow.
amazing thing. And
Oh.
my immediate thought like was right to the project I'm working on now of just like
Mm.
that's such an apt,
Hmm.
just yeah, it is really like just a beautiful weird landscape. And I feel like you see some of the weirdest parts of people through
Uh-huh.
work, and also through customer service. I feel like people will show you the weirdest parts of themselves if they feel like they've paid for something and they're not getting it. You get a very interesting version of that
Oh,
person. uh
wow.
yeah, I really like that paid research. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, do you write on a notebook or a computer?
So like long projects exclusively on a computer. I have really terrible handwriting, so if I need to like go back to that piece of work, I will do it on a computer. I love writing in notebooks though, and there's like such a big satisfaction in finding a really good pen, just like that perfect pen that speaks to you. Um, yeah, and I have never been able to write on my phone. I have a friend who writes like almost exclusively on her phone, and I think she's a maniac because I do not understand. She's just, you know, I can't do it. And
So
I pretty much need
laborious.
to like write on my laptop.
Hmm.
I don't
Hmm.
know. Yeah, in fact, I actually swapped out. My work gives us computers, and I actually asked for another one because this other one made it so hard to write. And they were like, "Why are you giving it back?" And I was like, "No reason. I just wanted another one." But really, it was like it made it impossible for me to write anything out.
That's funny. So, what's the most difficult thing about writing for you?
Doubt, right? I think doubt for sure. And I'm sure that that's a familiar moment for every person who's ever tried to write something longer than 5 pages. You
Mhm.
get to that point in either a session or over a longer period of time where you have that conversation of like, is this even worth it? You
Mm.
know, you've who's gonna read this? Is this good? Like, why are you even? Um, and then that can easily like, proliferate into everything. Is that the right word? Is that the right
Mm.
sentence? Should the comma
Mhm.
go there? And you
Mhm.
can sort of get lost in that um, in that doubt. So for me, it's just I have to remind myself pretty much every day of like, first drafts mean nothing, which is
Uh-huh.
something I still struggle with. I want every draft to be perfect.
Uh-huh.
And B, you have to have a little bit of belief, you know, and you have to have a little. You have to take a leap of faith. So like, yeah, maybe nobody will read it, but I'm having fun, right? And like,
Mhm.
maybe that's good
Wow.
enough.
Is it? That's a huge question. Like, are you writing for yourself? Are you writing for an audience? What's your answer?
I am writing for myself with the vague hope that there are other slightly deranged folks like me out there that might appreciate. Yeah, because it's like, why if I don't find it funny, if I don't find it moving, if I don't find it interesting or important, why would anybody else?
True,
If I don't
true.
believe in this piece of work the most, why
Mhm.
would anybody? And yeah, also I think I've learned, like I said, I'm on the fifth try of writing a novel, and so I have this whole stuff behind me, and it's like some of that work will never see the light of day. I know that, even if tomorrow somehow somebody steals my hard drive and uploads it to Random House and they publish everything I've ever written, there's still some of that they're going to be like, actually, this is garbage, and we're not going to publish it. So I have to take some satisfaction in the fact that I wrote it, and I
Yes, yes.
I put forward that effort, and it's not necessarily about what happens to it after that. And I think also you can learn a lot about yourself through writing things down. I think that's one of the weirdest things about writing as like an art, and how it's a little bit different from other arts. It's just kind of you and a blank piece of paper, and whatever falls out, it just comes from your head. uh,
I love it.
and sometimes the like what you see on the page, you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize I was thinking about that thing so much. Or like, wow, I didn't notice that, like, hey, I need to write something that makes a character unlikable, and then you write something that you don't like about yourself, and you're like, oh wait, just called myself out on that one a little bit. um yeah, I think anymore I just want to like have fun myself, and if it gets to the point where somebody else has fun too, that's awesome.
Oh, I love that. That's a wonderful perspective. So, Mac, in closing, what are some tips you would offer to other writers, especially those who are juggling work, farm, family, maybe not the farm, but just a very robust life?
um you're doing great. Just that's what it is. If you are being intentional, if you're writing something down every day, if you're maybe reading something every day, sometimes that's all you have. And I think that it's important to just remember that like it's okay to just have fun, and it's also okay to not push yourself all the way there.
Hmm.
Make it manageable for yourself. Make it make sense for yourself. It doesn't have to look like, you know, what everyone else says. I feel like I'm quoting a lot of writers in this, which is odd, but like I think Stephen King went on record one time and he was like, if you don't read 4 hours a day and write 4 hours a day, I don't know how you could ever expect to be a writer. It's like, well, not everybody has 8 hours a day, Stephen.
Hello,
So,
that's the
you
truth.
you need to make it work for yourself. And if it works for you, that's always the most powerful thing. Write something
Right.
down, read something every day, but also like, you know, kiss your kids, have fun.
Yay, I love that. So wise. That's beautiful. Mac Fox, thank you so much. Now, where can people find you or read more of your work?
So I've been published in Open Minds Quarterly, which you
Hmm.
can find online, and my short story, um, I Picked My Wife from a Flower Bed is the opener for a new anthology from Millennial Pulp, which
Oh,
is
wow.
just published last October, I think. And you can follow me on Instagram at timestamptramp.
Timestamp tramp, just 3 words together.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, cool. Wonderful, wonderful. And you will be in the 2020 Anthology of International Writers from Two Sisters Writing and Publishing. So that should be coming out later this year. So we're so proud that you are part of our writing community, Mac Fox, because you're very talented. And I think that you're going to continue to do great things. I hope your novel dream comes true. So next time we talk, you'll be like, hey, I'm writing full time in my farm with my family, and that all good things come to you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So keep us posted on everything that's happening, okay?
Absolutely. Thank
All
you
right.
again for inviting me. I had a great
You're
time.
so welcome. Good. Excellent. Excellent. And thank you, all of you, for joining us here on Writer Talks, where you got to meet Mac Fox, winner of the Erotica Short Story Contest here at Two Sisters Writing and Publishing. His story will be published in our 2020 International Anthology of Short Stories. And so we will look forward to seeing you then. Please follow us on Twitter at Two Sisters Writing, the number Two Sisters Writing. You can follow me at Elizabeth Atkins. Please go to twosisterswriting.com. Check out all our short story contests that you can enter with a chance to be published in our international anthologies and be interviewed here on Writer Talks. So remember, happy reading and happy writing. We'll see you next time.